Hello, Future Proof. We are closing down the Ocean presentation, the Ocean stage. This is it, last one, you made it. Thanks for sticking around. We're going to make it worth your while. We are going to talk workflows. This will be exciting, enlightening. First, we're going to do I don't know if you know all these gentlemen sitting to my right, to your left. Each one has a very successful business. All have some very compelling things to talk about in the world of workflows. So I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves and just briefly catch you up with what they do if you don't already know. And then we're going to go from there. So David, why don't you kick us off?
You want me to start?
Yes, please.
All right. I do want to start by saying Reese actually does own a tie.
Occasionally I wear it.
Obviously, at least once you wore it. So I'm David Knoch. I'm CEO of Docupace. Our technology digitizes and automates the back office of wealth management firms. And so we love workflow. We've got a workflow solution. We'll talk more about what we do, but we are a back office ecosystem for financial advisors and the firms that work with them. And so I will say, just before I pass this on, you guys actually missed the best conversation because that took place at 10 o'clock as we were preparing for this. We'd like to repeat it for you, but it would not be appropriate. So.
That's a hard one to follow up. There's a lot of mystique there. It wasn't that interesting. Don't worry. My name is Reese. I am the CEO of a company called Elements. We help financial advisors have better conversations with accumulators. It's been a lot of fun. And I've really loved getting to know the three of these gentlemen. We've had some great conversations the last few weeks and look forward to adding some value here today for everybody. And make sure and stay clear of these exits. Any minute now, we're probably going to experience a really fast rush of people coming in. So just steer clear, be careful, and
keep the kids out of the way.
Keep the kids out of the way. Yep. Emil?
Thanks. Yeah, my name is Emil Tarazi. I'm the co-founder of Logically. Logically is a portfolio analysis tool. We cater to both advisors and asset managers. Advisors can use our platform, web-based platform. Asset managers primarily use our APIs to power their websites and power tools on their websites. Logically has recently become part of Vetify. Vetify is a much bigger company, does really services the entire wealth ecosystem, but primarily runs websites that you may know like etfdb.com and ETF Trends. So I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Emil. Thanks, guys.
Wait, Frank, what do you do?
Oh, so founder and portfolio manager of Grinnell Capital. We offer SMAs to financial advisors to enhance what they do for their clients. But that's not about me. It's about you guys.
Thanks, Frank.
So just to kind of lay the groundwork, guys, each one of these gentlemen accomplished in their current business, accomplished in a former business, so they can speak to workflows that are not just germane to what they do now, but they can speak about things that they've done in the past. We're going to do a little bit of that in the beginning, and then we're going to really dial down a bit more into portfolio management and securities analysis. We're going to get into a little bit of client acquisition, and we're going to get a little bit into digitization of your operations. So if that all sounds compelling, you are in the right place. First and foremost, this is kind of on the general side. I'd love it if you guys would each share a specific situation where a workflow that you implemented really helped increase the efficiency of your operation, of your business, the effectiveness. Doesn't have to be this business, but if you could share a story with everyone, I think that would be fantastic. And you could start with whomever. Surprise us.
I feel like I'm being looked at.
You haven't talked in a bit. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the question was actually your business. So I'm in the interesting position of, in my former firm, I was a client of my current firm. And so I can actually talk about me solving my own problem.
That works.
And so I'll talk a little bit of crap on ourselves, but I think the example for us was, and this may be a theme that I think goes throughout some of my comments, I think our biggest challenge in my last firm was not that we didn't have workflow software and not that we didn't have people who were competent at building it out. what we were trying to do, unfortunately, was make our workflow sort of replicate pre-workflow business practices, and that was an abject disaster. We ended up, and not only was it a disaster, we kept layering on to the workflow disaster that we had, right? Because every situation was unique. We had to solve for every problem with a unique change to the workflow. Like, we felt like we were special unicorns in some way, and our workflow needed to reflect it. And that's crap, right? So we had 70-something workflows, and it was taking way too long for us to open accounts for our financial advisors. I ran a 1,000-advisor wealth management firm, and so we were taking, I don't know, we'll measure new account opening for us in days, right? And advisors were unhappy with the process, right? So just take too long, too many NIGOs, and we did that to ourselves. And so we actually used the firm that I'm with now to come in and really re-examine that process and build it out. And we went from 70-something workflows to a dozen. They were much simpler. They were much more organic. They didn't try to fit every use case. They fit broad-based use cases. We ended up getting our new account opening times then down from days to hours. And then we ended up driving advisor satisfaction with the back office to 96%, which is pretty good for an ops team, I think, right?
That's very good.
Now on the other side, I've seen our technology do this, right? So we've done it in small cases, we've done it in really big cases. Like, our largest client had 26 individual systems involved in workflow. They brought down to one. They got new account opening times from days to 24 minutes. And they processed 281,000 transactions, 844,000 documents in their first year on the platform, right? So it does it at scale, whatever that scale is.
Great.
Thanks, David. I'll take it from a different angle on maybe a different part of workflow. The thing that I'm interested in exploring as a financial advisor and kind of a product-centric CEO is like time to value for a prospect. Like, how fast can an advisor demonstrate value to someone that doesn't really think financial advisors might have any value, right? How fast can I flip the script from a consumer that is younger and receiving like a lot of information from TikTok and Instagram and a variety of YouTube channels and lots of content. Like, they think they know what financial advisors are, and they think they know that they're overpriced and that they all just want AUM fees, and that somehow that all correlates to like not good. And what I want to try to do is like flip that script a little bit for the consumer that is skeptical, and help them see that financial advisors are just incredible human beings that like care deeply about people. That financial advisors care. Yeah.
You're here.
So I love the idea of using technology in a prospecting context and sort of a marketing context to demonstrate the value of advice really quickly. A story that for me was really impactful, it's happened to my own personal private clientele. I've been testing and exploring a new model. I'm trying to create a model where I get paid more to work with someone who doesn't give me their assets. So I'm trying to explore, like, can I make more money actually if I don't take on the AUM of a customer? Like, avoid the effort, the conflict of the perception. I manage personally maybe $140 million book across 35 families. So it, as you might expect, just kind of skews to that typical, high net worth family that I'm interacting with. But I received a lead a few months ago that told me, like, I'm not going to do an AUM-based relationship with you, and my current practice is an AUM-based model. And I was like, well, let's see if I can flip this script. And I said, well, what do you want to pay? And he said, well, I've met with 3 financial advisors, and all of them said I had to have $500,000 to work with them. And I'm like, and he said, I only have 500. This person was making a pretty high income, but that was his total cash position, which represented about like 2 months worth of payroll in his business. And, it wasn't available for withdrawing from his operating business account and investing it, right? I mean, it was like really uncomfortable that a financial advisor, without knowing anything, was like telling him to pull money out of his business checking account and invest it. You know, there hadn't even been any rapport built. So he said no 3 times. And when we met, instead of telling him what my fees were, I just asked him, like, how do you want to pay? Like, what would you want to do? He's like, I don't know. He's like, I just read everything online, and it says, like, that's like not a good model. I'm like, well, what is too much money, or what's too little, and what should you pay? And it was really interesting to see. He just wanted to write a check. Just wanted to write a check. And I used Elements to have that first conversation with him. And he told me he thought the right thing to do would be to start with a $3,000 retainer. This is him telling me that. He said, I just would like to have 3 or 4 meetings, and if it goes well, like, we'll keep going. And I was like, well, that seems pretty good. It's like $750 an hour, and like there's no overhead, and I don't have to do any prep. I don't have to do any follow-up, and like he's telling me that's what he wants. I'm like, let's try it. So he filled out his profile, because I told him, in order to make this work, I can't do any of the data entry. I can't like manage your money, and I can't like analyze all your data. But I'd love to have a conversation with you and see where it goes. So you're going to have to fill out everything. He filled out everything. He populated his Elements scorecard. I was presented with that scorecard, and we had our first conversation, and that led to him proposing this fee model. We're now through our 4th meeting, about almost 3 months later. And each meeting has been ad hoc. I didn't know what I was going to be talking about when I showed up. He just wanted to talk to me about a variety of issues. And after the 4th meeting, his retainer just got billed, or will be billed again shortly. He already agreed to that. And he told me the last time we met, he's like, I said I didn't really want you to like manage the money, and I don't really want anyone to manage that money for me. Tell me what like you would do if I gave you all my money. And I was like, okay, this retainer model is going to stay in place, and I'm still going to make $750 an hour for the consultative time, which was more than I was making in my traditional AUM relationships in many cases. And he told me that 50 basis points sounded like a pretty good deal on AUM, because that's what he saw on Wealthfront. And I was like, does he expect me to drop my retainer, or does he expect me to incorporate it somehow? And there was no expectation of that. It was just like a natural, yes, I know you need to manage this money, and I'll pay the fees for the consultative time that I need. My point in telling you this story, and I'm not really great at brevity or staying on track. So
No way.
there's 3 stories in here
We
somewhere.
didn't learn that earlier at all.
But the point was, I feel like I demonstrated to him really early in this workflow process, really early in the conversion, that he didn't need to rip out $500,000 out of his business. That example that I was talking about earlier was a way that I demonstrated value very quickly and said, I don't think it's appropriate to withdraw more than probably 150 given your business overhead. And no one had even told him that, right? And I told him that within probably 1 minute of him completing his onboarding flow. My point is, like, where in the workflow can we get to adding value quickest with the prospect, so that they see this beautiful human being, the advisor, that really deeply cares about them? And are we going to innovate a bit on business model, or are we going to just say, like, deal with it? I think there's some work that as an advisor community we have to do to innovate a bit on business model, to make it a little more comfortable for the next generation to see the value. And we can probably make more money than we've ever made and open up a huge new market that we weren't really addressing before, just because we were only offering them one option. So I like choice, I like short time to value, and I think whatever you can do in your workflow to show value to prospects quicker will just grow your organic growth rate much, much better. So thanks for letting me share that experience.
That's great.
Thanks.
So yeah, I mean, talking about workflow efficiency for us is really about the investment management portion of the business. And when we think about things, I like to think about spreadsheets and how we can move away from spreadsheets as much as possible. So really the workflows that we've built are focused on, you can never get rid of the spreadsheet. You might be able to reduce the amount of time you spend in there, but really just loading up your investments into our system, ideating, going through a lot of different options, proposals, back testing, and then outputting to proposal, that's really where we've brought that down to a matter of seconds today. So one example, one client that we work with does a lot of work with tax analysis, so analyzing tax lots for the purpose of tax loss harvesting. And the amount of data you need for that tends to explode a little bit, because every position you have may have dozens, hundreds, thousands of lots. So there's a lot of data. You have to sort the lots. You have to figure out what the cost basis is. We've essentially, with the engine that we've built, we can now upload those lots instantly, and then spit out 4 or 5 different scenarios where it's about harvesting the capital losses, harvesting capital losses against capital gains, just really detailed information that previously took this one client 30 minutes. Now it takes a minute. And that's really how I think about technology. When we build technology, when we deploy technology, if you're the user of technology, you really want that order of magnitude efficiency. Does the technology you employ, or is what we're building and selling to our clients, does that give them a 10x, or in this case 30x improvement over what they do? So that's just one example.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. So show of hands out there, who has part of their enterprise, part of their team, part of their company in a different geography than their own? Anybody have folks that live somewhere else besides where you do? Yeah, okay. Okay, that's what I thought. So that's probably about half of you right there. So gentlemen, I would love to know, in your opinion, in your experience, what have been the most effective tools to deal with remote work, to deal with virtual teams when it comes to the essential and really important collaboration that would be involved with modern workflows, what have you, to really successfully run an enterprise? David, why don't you kick us off again?
Sure. So I'll try to give you 2 unselfish answers and maybe 1 or 2 selfish answers, just because we're in the workflow space. So I think first there needs to be, I'm going to try to keep this simple, because I actually think we overcomplicate tool sets and how some of this stuff works, right? And I think the tools are not necessarily as important exactly as the concepts. Like, there needs to be a communication hub inside a remote firm. Like, we're 164 employees in 35 states and 6 countries. Like, we're everywhere, and everyone's everywhere, right? So there's not a lot of individual density. And so communication hub, like for us, that's Slack, right? I mean, we can't live without it. Because that's a way to keep everybody online, and the tool's useful enough. Like, I'm used to an office environment where I can just go walk by somebody's office. Now I can just hit a Slack huddle button and I can achieve the same effect, right? And so there's behavioral change that happens, but whatever your communication hub is, you still need one in that remote work environment. The second piece is that there needs to be some type of collaboration hub that the firm has. And so for us, our collaboration hub is Jira, because we're a technology company. But I think for a lot of wealth management firms, that collaboration hub is their CRM, right? So that's the place where everybody sort of meets. And that's where, for a lot of firms, the workflows themselves live. Like, you may have additional workflows for additional tools, right? But your core business operation workflow tends to live in your CRM solution, right? And so that's a great, from my standpoint, it's a really nice collaboration. But you need one. Like, what's the place where everybody meets each other, not for communication, but for actually processing our work? I think the last one then, selfishly, is some type of data and integration hub. Because your workflow processes and all the rest of these tools don't work particularly well if you're trying to manually move data between systems, right? I mean, the workflow is helpful to know you've got to do it, but you're going to find yourself irritated, and you probably are, that the next workflow step isn't well informed by the prior workflow step. And so for us, we help solve some of that through our technology tools, right? So we have a tool called Precise FP, which gathers data from clients, and the goal of that is to inform downstream systems, right? So at the beginning of the workflow process, you've got data that can actually flow through, right? You've got the central repository of data and connectivity that can work when you're making these handoffs. that again, even if your CRM is your central spot, you're still making workflow handoffs to other partners. And in Docupace, we do a lot of that for new account opening and complex workflows for enterprise firms as well. But again, we're still handing off from some sort of central data and integration hub. So to me, if I'm just going to categorize it, it's that way. Listen, I think an important point before I turn this over, the tools don't matter at all. Like, there's no technology transformation you need to go through to do any of this. Like, you've got all the tools today. Part of my reason for describing simple tools, like, you can do all of this. For most firms, this is a cultural change, right? If you're going to end up having distributed workforce, you don't need to find new technology tools. You need to find a new way that the firm agrees to do work and a way to change your culture. And then your technology tools will work for you. And if you get so excellent at that, you need to find more advanced tools, you're already in the top 10%. So.
Yeah, very true.
Thanks, David. I think I'd share a lot of those thoughts. It's sure great to listen to you guys. Smart people. The one thing I'm thinking of, probably just as a shout out to probably the person that's maybe had the most transformation during this time is like Eric Ewan, like the Zoom CEO. I'm like, is there anything that made work more possible than Zoom for a lot of us? I think shout out to you. That really helped my company. Also, it's hard to imagine a world without Slack. So unselfishly, like, those are just like self-evident. I think like tools that really, for me, were transformational to really run a team. The thing that probably is unique, or another like thing that has nothing to do with my product is probably, but it may be a weakness of mine historically, has been really intentional meeting cadences with very specific agendas, action items, and a meeting sort of like process. I don't know how many of you use a management framework, but there's lots of different types of management frameworks to execute meeting cadences. And I find that I'm reviewing for example, one meeting might be the revenue team, like new consultations, sales conversion rate, like all of our top of funnel metrics. Like, that meeting's happening like every week, right? And then my leadership team meeting is also happening every week, and it's got a very specific like agenda. So I have certain one-on-one meetings, I have certain group meetings, and I'm very intentional. My team is, I should say, with me in determining who's going to attend, what function does that person play. After we have a particular person in a meeting for 3 or 4 weeks that was a newcomer, we might find that we just need to remove them. One person I got removed yesterday from revenue team. Like, I got removed by my CEO or COO and president. He's like, dude, I don't think you're adding value to revenue team. Like, it's more tactical. And you're like always taking us into 2024 and beyond. Like, we don't need you there. We need you to just like listen to the meeting and then chime in. And it's true. Like, my strengths are not like week-to-week execution. It's really hard for me to stay focused on something that we already decided needed to be done. Like, I can't do that very well. I have to move on to next week. So I'm not a good participant in an operational meeting because I'm going to bring tension. I might distract from the meeting. Some shareholders in that meeting do not want to hear the 2024 vision. Like, they're scared to hit their bonus for Q2. So they don't want me to talk about product evolution. And so there's just like some really important learnings for me about like who should be at meetings, how frequent do they need to occur, and how respectful are we about the purpose of a meeting. If I didn't improve on meeting cadences and frequencies, I'd probably not have been able to function super well. And I think companies that are thriving right now in this remote world are probably the ones that are just really doing a good job at having a balance between asynchronous communication through tools like Slack and Zoom, combined with synchronous communication and meetings that are done through that same digital channel, but scheduled, effective meetings. And I use a framework called EOS for a lot of those meeting frequencies, and I think a lot of you probably do too. Anyway, that's the unselfish kind of part. Selfishly, the last thing I would add is Elements. We built Elements on mobile first and sold to advisors with a mobile app. Not a huge market for that. since the average advisor age is 56, 57, and they don't use their phones for work primarily. But I knew that for me, the biggest pain point was like when I'm on the phone with a client or when I'm in a meeting with a client, I want them to be able to open up their phone and take responsibility for the accuracy of their own data in a really simple, stupid, simple kind of way. Like, I'm not responsible for maintaining the value of every data point in our interaction. That's on the beautiful UX that we have put in the palm of their hands, and a little bit of accountability for me. So that, for remote work for me has been awesome to do on a cell phone with my AirPods in, looking at the client's data on my phone, having another client, having the client look at the phone and agree on the scorecard and the interpretation of their data without ever having to meet. It's beautiful. And I don't think very many advisors are wanting to work that way yet. So we released a web version, and yes, it works on a computer. Yes, it works on a computer, folks. It does.
Hey, Reese, real quick. You talked about EOS, which is an acronym. So in case they want to look it up and so they don't
Go
find
ahead, yeah.
cryptocurrency,
Share
what
it.
do you tell them?
Well, you love this too. How about break up the noise a little bit? I want to hear what you used it.
Yeah, Entrepreneur's Operating System.
It's an entrepreneurial operating system. The book, I mean, there's a piece of software actually that they've also launched to help manage. I don't use it. But anyway, the Entrepreneurial Operating System is a great book. You might like it.
Cool. So yeah, my view on operating a team, like obviously before COVID and through COVID, it's been a journey. It's changed quite a bit. I come from the trading floor background where, everybody's all huddled together. If you want something, you stand up, you yell at them. Latency's super low because you're just communicating, rapidly that way.
Good old days.
Sorry. I was a big proponent of being in the office. Obviously, COVID changed all that. And being distributed today, when we first started, this remote work stuff, we had meetings all the time. And it was just tiring. I mean, everybody's, fatigued from back-to-back Zoom meetings. It's crazy, right? So what we've sort of grown into now is a few things. First of all, you guys have mentioned some tools like Slack, Zoom, Jira. Those tools are great. We use them as well. But I think before that, you need to have a process, and that process needs to be written down. And that process is maybe it's the EOS concepts. I didn't know about EOS until recently, actually, but there needs to be an understanding of what the mission is and what every individual's role is to get to that mission. And when you break up the tasks, there's sort of long-term tasks, medium-term tasks, and short-term tasks, and they all take different priorities. But I think the common theme across all of them is really, is this task furthering our mission to our clients? And as long as you instill that value across your team and someone's faced with a task, they'll know, okay, this is low priority because it doesn't get us closer to our mission. Once you've mastered that sort of framework, then we've learned to introduce tools like we use GitHub quite a bit for issue tracking. It's more for coding and stuff like that, but it has great project management tools. Jira is quite similar, but again, your mastery of these tools is limited by everybody's understanding of how to use them.
Great. Thanks, Emil. So each one of you has a business that's involved in different aspect of workflow for financial advisors. We actually talked about this earlier before we all sat down together a little while ago, just the evolution of the asset management business, how quickly it's changing, really what we look out 5, 10 years down the road as leaders of workflow type businesses, what changes do you see what opportunities maybe do you want to capitalize on? What do you see out there for RIAs in terms of this whole scope of talk? Yeah, what do you see out there going? This is going to be good. We'll start with Reese. Reese loves to expound on, looking down the road, 30,000-foot guy. So we're going to start with him.
Thank you. We'll keep it brief. 30,000 feet needs to be covered in 2 minutes. Let's see. The thing I'm probably the most excited about is like it sounded like I was making a pejorative about the average age of advisors. I think in some senses it is a pejorative, but not about any one particular advisor, but just like where's the public's demand for this career? Like why is the average age of a financial advisor just inherently older than the average age of a CPA? Like why isn't the average age of a financial advisor 45? Not like we need it to be younger. At least David tells me that, right? Okay, so like that question to me like is an interesting one because what that's saying is that this is not an attractive career for people to enter at the same rate as other careers. So my theory on this is partially it has to do with like we have to evolve our profession to create a better business model for people to want to engage with financial advisors easier, with lower levels of commitment, with more high impact interactions that result in clear understanding of money. Like I think that this next generation of consumers really does want to learn. And if you look at Forrester's research on their website of all of the consumer archetypes that they're studying, they have a new category that they released called the digitally savvy delegator. And they say that this new consumer archetype lives in between a validator, which is someone that wants to work with a professional but likes to do their own research. And that's different from a delegator who wants to work with a professional and does not like research. And that's kind of the primary differentiation between the two. One, the validator generally likes to do their own research, have a bit more control, but they want to depend on a professional as their sort of sounding board consistently, their sort of their coach, the strategic decider, the person that helps them take action. And I think historically it was really we just didn't have a way to get paid besides assets under management and have it be profitable. I want both. I mean, as you heard my example earlier, I don't want to get rid of any revenue that I could get. I want to maximize the revenue I can collect from any willing consumer wanting to write a check. But sometimes that means that if you say this is the only way I can get paid, you're going to eliminate a pretty big swath of the market that might be going, I don't like the way you get paid. Well, do we have to be that binary? Can we start thinking of our industry more like, well, some people like to have the diamond status at Delta and go to the Sky Club just to hang out and have, I don't know, better internet for the day. And they're willing to pay a lot for a stupid credit card to make that happen, and they just want it. So can we just make some money? And can we give them access in the way that they want? I just think we have plenty of capable people in the industry right now to serve way more people than we're serving. And I think that's why the average age of advisor keeps skewing older, is because we, as an industry, have not invented or created enough ways to bring more participants into receiving advice. Consumers are not seeing it as an attractive first option. They're going to go file a tax return before they talk to a financial advisor in their lifetime, right? And so I just like the idea of let's play in the space of consumer is changing, consumers becoming more of a validator. Let's serve the delegators with our most profitable option, because that's what they want. They want you to deal with everything the delegator does. But this validator is more fluid, and that's the future. So if you're not playing with that consumer, my worry is that in 5 years from now, you might find yourself in a position where your valuation is just like really struggling, because it looks like only 30% of the children of clients, of parents of kids, are even sticking with the same financial advisor. I mean, that's like disastrous statistics for large RIAs. So if we're not building a service model for the kid of the clients, like we don't have a new service model either for them. They want something different. That's kind of my view of where I'm going to try to go, just to protect the value of my enterprise and expand the, the consumer audience that I can address. Because I think many of them are consumers of financial advice. They want an advisor. They just want it in a different kind of way. I actually think you can make more money with that consumer than people think.
Yeah, no, agree. That was great. David, thoughts on the future?
Well, I have no clue what's going to happen 5 or 10 years from now. Probably none of us really do, which is actually super exciting in some ways, right? The future is incredibly mysterious. I do know that the world that financial advisors are in is likely to be sort of more empowering and more awesome, right? I don't think it's going to get worse for financial advisors. I think it gets a lot better because it's been getting a lot better pretty quickly. I think from our standpoint, part of the way we think about the future is through the lens of what we do. And for us, I'll give you some themes that are reflected in the work that we're doing today. So one of it is sort of consumer-oriented design. I mean, if you've been in the workforce for long enough, you had better technology at work than you had at home. Today, it's the opposite, right? Yet, particularly for complex systems like ours, like workflow, new account opening, like super unsexy but necessary stuff, you've got industrial designs that are inside of these systems because they're industrial systems. And so we're in the process of completely changing that mindset away from sort of this industrial design nature, which is probably more common in tool sets like ours, into one that's very consumer oriented, right? You don't need to lose the complexity and institutional nature of software today, but you do need to lose the complex and institutional design elements that are there. And so that's one that I think is a trend that continues to the extent technology today is being created for professionals. I think it's going to be largely created with a B2C mindset as opposed to the B2B mindset we've largely had. I think the second one that matters to us, and I think it's an industry trend, is the self-authoring has been a rise, and the self-authoring trend that's in our industry, whether it's advisors or their clients, that self-authoring trend isn't going to reverse, right? We want increasing levels of customization, increasing levels of personalization, and so as designers of workflow systems and technologies, like that's a trend you can't ignore, right? Like our system needs to be user configurable, it needs to be personalizable, and it needs to be very easy to do all that work, again, without losing the institutional horsepower that's behind it. How do you lean into a self-authoring trend? So whatever you do, serving clients or running technology firms or wealth management practices, like that self-authoring trend isn't going away. And if you're ignoring it, I think there's a problem over 5 or 10 years. I think again, selfishly, we have this conversation all the time. Everyone still, rightly so, thinks that all of their data should move across all of their systems, and this should be easy to do. And we still have 40% of people opening new accounts on paper, and we already know our systems don't talk to each other. And so the industry does itself no favors when it comes to integrations. I actually think you and I are going to end up in this because we're like, we should integrate our technologies together. And what we said to each other is, well, we've got API libraries, you write to it. And so at one point, like the industry was like somebody wrote to somebody else. We're all now changing that. Like none of us are writing to each other at all. We're just saying you write to, like, I don't know where that goes, but it's probably not beautiful for a moment, right? Integrations have got to get better. The industry is not overall helping itself with that. I mean, listen, when I open a new account by carbon copying a custodian on a DocuSign, like, come on, or when I literally I don't know how many fax queues we have. We got fax queues in our software. Like, we're faxing paperwork. Like, that's insanity. I can do fully authenticated digital data across an entire ecosystem, yet I'm converting fully authenticated digital data into a form object and sending it off. Like that's not, at least in my perspective, probably not a good way for the industry to go. And then finally, for us, the AI trend is AI-powered business intelligence, right? And so our system and the systems you work with, I think to a large degree, there needs to be elements that like gamify it, coach, give advice, or self-healing. And so I think that trend-wise, we're going to end up with smarter systems through the use of whatever, ML, RPA, AI, all those tools will make it easier.
I think the same audience that maybe Reese was talking about, that newer emerging consumer, has a taste for exactly what you're talking about, the more modern, even the gamification word, what have you?
Well, like in our workflow software, like in our new designs, like we've got little gamification. Like if you've opened a bunch of new accounts on our system, there's a little icon that shows up, like you're on a hot streak, right? Like
They love it.
it's just little tiny design elements like that are actually important.
What about you, Emil?
So when I started as a trader, 16 years ago now, ETFs, there was about 1,000 ETFs. ETF AUM was $700 billion. Today, we've 10x the AUM. We're closer to 7 trillion, and there's over 3,200 products. So when we think about what we're doing to with our technology, with our tools, it's really all about the ETF and building insights and analytics and deep dive analysis to use the ETF as a building block in your portfolio. And really, when you look at ETFs today, there's really everything under the sun. There's single stock, leveraged ETFs, you name it. And I think we're going to continue to see over the next 5 to 10 years just increased innovation around what people put in this ETF wrapper. So, yeah.
Great. I'm actually going to stick with you. I'm going to stick with the evaluating securities, portfolio management type thing. You talked about ETFs. The passive index crowd, indexing, they want to, I feel like the deaths of ETFs is being wildly over-exaggerated. I'm a huge fan. We're an active shop. We do use ETFs quite a bit. We have one model that's all ETFs. Tell me about what's available to the PM, to the financial advisor nowadays with the technology that's here when it comes to doing those forward screenings, forward evaluation of ETFs, whether it's sector, whether it's international, whether it's those guys down the way that have the single treasury 10-year ETF, whatever it is. Tell me about evaluation to really improve, I'm going to use the word, workflows.
Right, yeah. So, on our platform, we have a whole suite of tools that focus around funds and also single stocks. But again, all of our data, we curate all of our data. We build analytics on top of that. And one interesting tool that I think kind of sets us apart, something called the overlap tool. So we have about 100,000 funds globally, global ETFs, mutual funds, and what we're able to do is compare the holdings of each fund against all other 100,000 funds. So what you can do is you can enter your portfolio or type in a single security, and you get a whole list of highly correlated replacements. And when you think about, I talked a little bit about tax loss harvesting. A great way to reap the benefits of harvesting capital losses is to take an ETF that's a sector fund, or for example, that you have a loss in, and replace it with any one of the other 20 sector funds out there. And then from another perspective, there's been this rise of thematics, and sometimes one example would be like, people want to add more robotics or more AI to their portfolios, but if you're in the S&P 5, you already have 30% technology exposure there. So understanding what the overlap would be between some robotics or AI theme against an S&P 500 fund, for example, you can bring that information up quickly and then get some insights on, let's not double down on that particular exposure.
Great, perfect, thank you. Reese, we've been talking a lot about marketing. Future Proof has been loaded with a lot of marketing advice, marketing thoughts, a lot of thought leaders. It's been awesome. I'm going to bring it up one more time relative to client acquisition. Where do you see the sticky point for financial advisors in terms of that client acquisition? Where's that sticky point? What are they having the toughest time with? and how do they grease that wheel?
I'm tempted to just let Frank and Emil answer this question because I think their answers have been awesome today. My experience here is that most advisors right now are getting between 1% and 2% of their total client count automatically referring new business. So your organic growth rate industry-wide is, 3% according to DFA right now. So my measure of are you succeeding in a marketing perspective is what's your organic growth rate relative to industry? An organic growth rate, the way you calculate it is just like how much more revenue did you bring in from new clients and existing clients, like new revenue, than you brought in last year. Like it's essentially that. So it could be deposits from existing clients that are young, that are saving money. It could be getting a new client. My experience is that most advisors are just getting the referrals that are naturally going to show up. And just because you got into this industry, there's a certain percentage that will just come to you naturally. But what's tricky is to get a skeptic to say yes to you. That's hard. Like it's hard to expand TAM, total addressable market. It's harder to get someone to convert who is on the fence. And that's where I think things like design and showing your work in public, demonstrating your value quicker, getting to value, answering questions, not like if I'm a consumer that's skeptical of a financial advisor and you address me with a PDF to fill out and a request to then come into my office, you're going to have a lower conversion rate than if the outreach is, I give a free financial assessment, anonymized. I don't even need to see your name. I don't need to know your data. You can anonymously submit a scorecard to me, and I will record an analysis of your situation and will not require you to tell me your name. Like, that's badass. And that's going to result in the prospect going, well, geez, the only thing you're selling is your advice? Like, you trust your competency that much to give me advice without knowing, not advice, but at least like an observation and insight, like some kind of comparative analytic or... So I think we just have to show value sooner to be able to expand our organic growth rate, because this is the truth is just that we are not in a market where people trust as easily, and they are often distrusting of institutions, particularly financial institutions, and financial advisors have the lowest trust almost of any profession that is recognized as a profession. Like, it's just not a great average at-bat opportunity for an advisor. You're just coming from a trust deficit, and the whole industry, especially places that might be not acting in the client's best interest, like all of that ecosystem affects how a prospect perceives even the best advisor. So you just have to show more value earlier, and I just think if you can do that and get your organic growth rate to where you're like at 7, 8, 9%, man, that is amazing.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. David.
You want me to answer that in 90 seconds?
Yeah, please.
Do this.
So we have a question on there. I'll read it, you answer it.
Okay.
As a smaller RIA or younger advisor getting started, how would you recommend starting to think about designing workflows from scratch?
Awesome. So don't start with technology.
Yeah.
Just don't start with tech. You'll get there. But I will say, if you have a team, I would get the team together. If it's just you, I'd get yourself together. I would think about the part of the client experience, particularly at the inception of the relationship, that might set your firm apart, or you or your firm apart. Like, what do you do differently? How does what you do look different, particularly in early innings? And I would try to document where in that journey, and write it down on a whiteboard or something, where in that journey do you have one of the following two opportunities. An opportunity to add value, that's a stop on your workflow, and a place that you need to check in. whether it's internally or externally. Like if you can capture that, what's unique about us, what's special about us, particularly in early innings, what are the steps in creating that add value, what are the steps where we need to check in, you'll probably have 90% of your workflow created at that point. Then go to any tool that you've got available to you. CRM is probably the case, and try to document that in that CRM tool. If you don't know how to do it, reach out to the CRM provider, they'll do it. And so I feel like from my perspective, it very much needs to start with what do you want your process to look like. Please do not try to replicate anything you already do or start with tech first.
Differentiation, so important. Thank you, gentlemen. That's the time we've got. Thank you, Future Proof.